The Banshees of Inisherin is a 2022 film that was directed by McDonagh, and was nominated for a Best Picture. Unfortunately, it did not win the Best Picture. That was taken by Everything Everywhere All at Once, which was also a fantastic film. But this is the one that I was hoping that won that year because it might have been my favorite film of 2022, but it definitely was the one among all the other nominees that I felt was the most deserving personally, in my own opinion. Not to take away anything from Everything Everywhere, because certainly it definitely impacted everything that it set out to do. This is just the one I like the most. And I already reviewed this on this channel really quickly, basically a spoiler free, and I said that I was going to be reviewing it in its entirety, which I'm going to be doing right now. But it's kind of funny because I gave this a rewatch and I still love it. I think it's a 5 out of 5. Great film. I just don't know like how much I can say about it. I can talk about certain moments of this film, but its concept is so like easy to describe. It's not a heavy concept. It's just the way you think about it, which is really interesting. Because this film, I guess that's the genius of this film. It's the fact that it feels bigger emotionally than it actually is. Which is, I took down my notes, and my notes are so small compared to a lot of notes that I take. Basically, what I'm trying to get at is I don't know if I can make this full length review. Maybe it will end up being a full length review because that's usually what happens. But essentially, what we have going on here is we have this little fictional island off the coast of Northern Ireland, if I'm not mistaken. And this stars Colin Farrell playing Pedrick, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Pedrick? They pronounce it in a certain way in the film, but he's playing Pedrick. We'll go with Pedrick. And his best friend, who's played by Brendan Gleeson, he's playing a guy named Com. And basically, one day, Com tells Pedrick that Com doesn't want anything to do with Pedrick anymore, and Pedrick doesn't take it so well, and he finds this kind of random. And then the story kind of goes on with Pedrick trying to figure out what Com's problem is and like where this came from, because it literally was dropped out of nowhere. And he's trying to replenish, I guess you could say, the relationship that they had going. And it's literally a masterpiece when it comes to its writing, and that's, I think, what all audiences fell in love with this film specifically was from its writing. Even though it's funny because the Irish dialect and the Irish slang is very heavy in this film. Sometimes you even need subtitles for certain people. I didn't watch this film with subtitles too much, but you can understand what they're saying. It's just very slang and very heavy in the, like, they say feck instead of fuck. Which is like one of the most memorable things about the film is like, are you fucking stupid? So this film is just packed with a lot of metaphors too, because on this fictional island, which I will get to the cinematography, but the cinematography, just to say right now, is absolutely stunningly gorgeous. I don't know where they shot this film actually, but it feels like any island off the coast of Europe, if you've been or if you've seen, pictures of, kind of thing. It's very coastal. There's a lot of mountain areas, and you can see the mainland in a lot of the movie, and it's just really, really beautiful wherever they shot this. But the island is fictional, but islands like this exist all over the coast of the UK, the coast of Europe, and all over that area, kind of thing. Lost my train of thought for 2 seconds there. There's a civil war going on in the mainland of Ireland, and they're watching this civil war, the two characters, while this story is taking place. Pedrick, played by Colin Farrell, he lives with his sister, and they live, kind of a small town life. Com lives by himself. He takes on music. He's I think he's a fiddleist, and he basically wants to write music, and he's kind of coming of age, essentially, into his, however old he is, 40s, 50s, whatever he is. And he basically wants to spend his remaining years, even though it's seemingly a long time, because they even have a conversation where Pedrick is like, "Are you dying?" And Calm is like, "No, I'm not dying." And it's like, "Well, you got plenty of time. What are you talking about?" kind of thing. But he essentially wants to live in peace and live in quiet, and he doesn't want anything to do with Pedrick anymore. Mainly because he states that Pedrick is not enthusiastic about life, and they don't apparently have the same connections anymore. But that's what he wants to do. He wants to write music, and he wants to be in peace, essentially. And Pedrick lives with his sister, like I said, and is trying to rekindle this relationship for the entire film with his best bud that he's been friends with for decades, and he's trying, and he doesn't. He's not aware of anything that went wrong, and realistically, nothing really did go wrong. It's just Calm claims that he had a falling out, and he doesn't want anything to do with Pedrick anymore, but still at the same time has no problem with mingling with literally everybody else on the island. And I guess this is maybe where I related to the film a lot, is because in my own life, like I've had so many circumstances where people just want to drop out of my life, and I try to logically make sense of it. And I'd say most of the time, 98% of the time, there is no resolution, there is no closure, there is no conclusion. And I think this film does a brilliant job touching on that no closure part of the end of something kind of thing. And it's funny how it uses the Civil War metaphor that's going on in the mainland amongst the story, because you don't know what's going on with. There's a war going on in the mainland of Ireland, but you don't know why. You don't know. This film also takes place in 1923, which it doesn't really feel like it. Like you believe it's 1923, but they just mention it kind of once in this scene where the guy's looking through the calendar and he changes it to 1923. Other than that, it feels like a secluded island. It could be modern day, but happens to be in 1923. Obviously, nobody's using cell phones, and there's no modern technology or anything like that in this film. But I really, really related to Pedrick, Colin Farrell's character, in the sense where he's literally so confused and is like, "What the fuck is going on?" And Calm just he just doesn't. He kind of says, like, he says bluntly, "I don't want anything to do with you anymore," but his reasonings are so bizarre and non-existent. The circumstance where Calm is just like, "I just don't like you anymore," and there's no why to it. You know what I mean? Like, when I end up, the way the story related to me, when I end up in situations where I crave, maybe crave's the wrong word, but I almost feel like I need an explanation, and sometimes there's no explanation to be found. I can't understand that other person, and I've said this in a video that I've also put on this channel, that I have a very hard time placing myself in other people's shoes. I've said that in my, actually, excuse me, it was the compliance video for the film Compliance. Go check out that review. It actually did really well on this channel. It got a lot of views. Great movie as well. But anyway, I said in that video, in that review, that I have a very hard time putting myself in other people's shoes. And throughout this whole viewing, I had a very hard time putting myself in Calm's shoes. And I like how the director, Martin McDowell, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, wrote the script and wrote the situation with Calm and how extreme he takes things, where literally he tells Pedrick that if for every time that Pedrick says something to him, comes near him, knocks on his door, or whatever it may be, comes to the bar even, the public bar, if he shows his face in the public bar, he'll like cut one of his fingers off. And you think he's just like, you're saying like, is this guy like bordering on mental illness here? And then he legitimately does. He says what he was going to do, and he, it goes, the plot goes in a direction where he literally does start cutting his fingers off, and you're just like, holy shit. And it's all metaphoric. Like it's not, you know, he cuts his fingers off in the movie, but the point of it is to be metaphoric. The metaphoric sense of the film is really well done, essentially in a nutshell. And I had to look up what there was this woman character. She kept on showing up kind of in the background. She seemed kind of like a gypsy type character, you know, wearing the veil kind of thing. And she would show up as a background character, and she seemed, again, very metaphoric. And I wanted to understand her character a lot more. But when the after this second viewing, the film ended, and I'm like, I really don't understand that character because I remember her from the first viewing, and I went into the second viewing wanted to study her character a lot more. But I found I understood her character even less than the first time watching until I actually like looked up the word banshee, and then it's like, oh well, of course she's the Banshee of Inisherin, and it makes total sense now. I felt a little bit like an idiot not putting that together, but the whole point of the movie was the Banshee of Inisherin. She's or the Banshees, but there's only one woman here. I like how she was like ghostly, like she was. They almost added like a spiritual essence, and the whole atmosphere of the island is very spiritual, and it's this film is very dreamlike. This film could be discussed for hours, maybe even days, and that's what I really liked about it. The character Dominic too, played by do I know the actor's name? He recently was in Saltburn, so he's popping in a lot, and he was in a film that I recently watched too, Killing of Sacred Deer. So this is an Irish actor that's popping in a lot. I just don't know if I'll. Is it Barry Keoghan? I'll write it down in the bottom. But this actor is popping up a lot. He's an Irish actor. Very good. And his character, again, just this like naive coming of age boy that's wrapped up in, like, he really has nothing to do with Pedrick and Com's kind of friendship or anything like that. He's kind of, essentially, he's just being given shelter by Pedrick and Pedrick's sister Siobhan because his father abuses him and stuff like that. But again, he's like the Banshee as well in a sense. He comes in and he just pops in here and there, and then at the end of the film, something insanely tragic happens to him. And it's one of those moments where, you know, when the tragedy happens to this guy, you're like, wow, we've been so focused on this mundane, mediocre, childish frenzy fight. Well, meanwhile, this horrible thing happened to Dominic, and on the mainland, there's this massive civil war going on, and you know, so much focus has been put on this nonsense kind of thing. But it also kind of speaks as well, like, why is there the nonsense? Why can't there be explanation? Why can't there be closure? The way I view things, like the kind of person I am, I really like black and white situations rather than like gray areas or in this, you know, in the way I relate to the film when it comes to Com and Pedrick. Why Com just all of a sudden from night to day be like, I don't want anything to do with this person anymore. Just cause. And it's funny because I've experienced that myself. Like I've had people say that to me, and I'm just like, I don't get it. I don't get it. I just don't. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And then their escalation of anger plays out. Like it's beautifully written. Again, Martin McDowell does a really good job with this film. And like I said at the beginning of this film, that's really all that this film is about. It's just a tiff between two guys and on a tiny little island off the coast of a tiny little part of Northern Ireland, and you have this gypsy looking woman who's the Banshee of Inisherin, and you have Dominic who's this kid who lives on the island, and you have, you know, a few other characters that come into play, and it's just it's a lot of people talking and conversating with each other that makes you reflect on like things in your own life. There's a scene where Pedrick gets drunk at the local pub and he confronts Com because he's drunk, and he shouldn't confront Com in that state, but he does. We've all been there. Self-admitting. That he confronts him, and obviously he's not he can't put a coherent sentence together. But Calm is just chilling over there with a bunch of people, and he doesn't want Pedrick around for seemingly reasons that don't make much sense or that he doesn't want to admit to. And then Pedrick just loses it, even though he shouldn't. It's a really, really interesting film, and I hope anybody watching this video has seen this film and knows what I'm talking about, because otherwise I don't think this review is going to make much sense. And why would you be watching a spoiler review on a film that you haven't seen? But I really think this film is brilliant, and I think this is one to watch and discuss heavily. This is the kind of film that you write essays on. I think Colin Farrell's brilliant. I think Brendan Gleeson is brilliant. If it's not Martin McDowell's best, it's on top, because with Martin McDowell, I think this is a masterpiece. I loved Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. I thought it was one of the best films of that year. It's hard to compare the two because this one is super Irish and Three Billboards is super American. But they're both brilliant in their kind of places in the world. In Bruges, I really liked. Seven Psychopaths was fine. I didn't not like it. It was just fine though. I think out of the four, that's the weakest, although I still really like it. I think it would be Seven Psychopaths, In Bruges, and then this one is battling with Three Billboards. But I think Martin McDonagh definitely is a phenomenal writer and visionist, and he knows how to put a film together. So massive respect for him and massive respect for this film. You really got to go check this out if you haven't. Um, Otherwise, I hope you have, like I said. Comment below on anything that I've said, but this is like a depiction of exactly, like, I relate most to Colin Farrell's character Pedrick. I relate most to him, and it's funny because a lot of people around him in this film are like, dude, just get over it, and I'm just like, he's like, why? And I'm like, exactly why? Like, I want to strangle Calm to be like, tell me what's wrong, like, what's the issue? And I haven't learned it yet, but sometimes I guess in life you just gotta let go, and Pedrick has that's his thing. He can't let go, and that's what I relate to. Sometimes what's best for me is to let go, but I can't. That's what I related to in the film. But it's, like I said, it's a good one to reflect on. And I love the Banshees of Inisherin. But that's all I got to say for now. Subscribe to Morgan Film Fan if you like to listen to my voice or if you like my film reviews. I'll be back with more soon, so stay tuned for those. Check out what's on the channel already. Stay tuned for what's coming. Until next review, have a good one. Take care and cheers.